Alrighty. This and we're live. Andrew, that is my name, and this show is called the Constitutional Roundtable. And with me, as always, is Warhamster, and soon, hopefully, we'll be joined by Doug. But anyway, while we're waiting for him, hopefully we're good. I may have butchered that beginning, but it's all right. We'll let it stick. But anyway, so how has your week been?
Pretty high stress. I was researching in some pretty deep and dark subjects. I was had a lot to do with work, and we've got 4 more days until the elections, and so putting a lot of efforts out in those areas too. So haven't had a whole lot of free time or downtime, but life is good.
How'd the thing that you and Doug had last week go?
It was good. It's a really good event. Dr. Judy Mikovits spoke. My friend Andrew Serafini was the MC. Yeah, it's his organization. Saw a lot of people we knew. Some really good presenters. A guy by the name of Joey Gilbert. He's a lawyer out of Nevada. And if you've heard the name, it's because he's been doing an awful lot of lawsuits fighting for medical freedom, etc. But it was an inspiring performance he put on. I really enjoyed it. So we had several good speakers. Another gentleman, drawing a blank on his name, but he was one of the early guys set up the airline pilot resistance to the vax. He's been on all the Fox News channels, everything like that. So yeah, it was a really good, it was an all-star lineup and great people.
Okay, all right. Well, I have been just keeping my nose to the grindstone at work and just trying to do some research on some things that I wasn't sure if I would be ready in time for tonight or if it'd be something else. So tonight's going to be kind of like a freestyle. We'll kind of take it as it goes.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I'm ready for.
Yeah. I don't see Doug. I know I sent him this.
Let me shoot him a text real quick while you keep everyone entertained.
Well, I guess, what do you want to talk about? What does the hamster want to talk about?
Bear with me one moment. I'm sending a text.
It's all right. Hopefully it's something fun that you can talk about since Doug's not here yet. Doug's like the dad. He keeps us in line.
What are the fun ones?
Yeah, no kidding. Let's bring that up later.
Yeah. So the stuff I was researching this week, I got a couple of rabbit trails I went down, was really going deeper into the technocracy and what that means. And it's really interesting. See, we talk about our governments are run by a bunch of technocrats.
Okay.
But the origin of the term goes back to the 1920s.
Interesting.
And well, yeah, there was basically based on the work of Charles Darwin and Hegel and probably the rest of the eugenicists and Marxists and all the different versions of the Fabian socialists, etc. They always were trying to think of better ways to organize society. And the technocrats were a bunch of, eggheads, doctors, scientist types, and they thought they could do it better than anyone else. And going along with the eugenics programs of the age, which I'll get into that in a second. They basically thought some human beings were more or worthy of reproducing and living on, and some were not. This all ties into the original warped idea from the population limit. For the love of God, Thomas Malthus.
If I may interject real quick, is it more like the like what the Nazis were trying to do? They're trying to basically weed out, like, so for instance, they'll take some undesirables and they'll find what traits they have that's ideal, and they'll keep those but kill everything else off. Or with the regular Germans, like, does that make sense? Is it kind of like that?
Well, it's 100% that. That's very astute. The Nazis' eugenics program was taken from some of the ideas of the others, and that they just had their own version of it. You had the Margaret Sanger version, which wanted to use abortion. interestingly enough, the eugenics was so big in the late, in the 19 teens and in the 1920s and even into the 30s. Some states had made it actual law that basically what the simple-minded, however they determined to declare that, and other unsavory types could be forced. They could force sterilize you. This was U.S. law. In 1924, that actually went to the Supreme Court and was upheld as legal. And after that, something like 32 states had eugenics laws or sterilization laws on the books.
Too
This
bad
is
Joe.
less than a cent.
Too bad Biden's done that.
If listen to Joe, he'll probably say he argued that case in front of the court.
Yeah. 100.
Did you hear what he did about that gaffe this week? So apparently in one of his speeches, he was talking about penicillin. He goes, yeah, the guy who invented it, he didn't even patent it because he wanted it to be available for everybody. And he goes, yeah, and I've met him. I've talked to him. It turns out the guy died 2 years before Biden was born. But Joe's got to make up something for no reason whatsoever to make himself seem bigger. It's his lies.
Or he's delusional and he thought that really happened.
It's entirely possible.
Well, here's one of the fun. Here's something funny. So there's a new podcast I'm listening to that one of my coworkers got me onto. What's hilarious is a lot of my coworkers are all conspiracy theorists like us. So they're.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist. We're conspiracy factualists.
Sorry, truth seeker. Better word.
I like conspiracy factualist, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I like that over truth seeker. But and then finish your story. But that's over the last couple of years, the corner of the internet where most of us, we get a lot of our information from, started calling itself the truth movement. But so many of these people that are influencers calling themselves truthers are doing anything but. They're speculating with no objective evidence, and they're teaching, they're telling anything but the truth. So I'm staying away from that term because it's guilt by association.
Okay, well then, whatever term you and I are, I'll let you determine what that is. Anyway, it was the Unidentified Alien podcast. It was hilarious. So they're actually a couple people from a news station that's down here, Florida, and it's actually a pretty good podcast. Obviously, I don't agree with everything on it, but there's some stuff that's interesting. But they were talking about this guy named Kramer who supposedly was with Joe Biden, or not Joe Biden, the one that's actually running the show, Barack Obama. That he and him were like these kid chrononauts that went to Mars and did all this stuff and went back in time and whatever. So that just made me think of that. I was just like, maybe Joe Biden knew Barack Obama back then and tagged along.
Yeah, that's fun stuff. What's the name of that podcast?
Unidentified Alien Podcast. And it's not like they're not like believers on there, which is what I appreciate. Like, they're pretty objective. I mean, obviously, one of them tends to believe more than the other, but it's very objective. Like they said, their whole point of the podcast is to tell the story, and then you decide what you think about it or not. And I was like, okay, it was pretty good. They don't just talk about that stuff though. They talk about other stuff too, and they have like some disclosure documents that was released from the CIA, which reminded me. I was like, disclosure from the CIA is it's an oxymoron. If they release something as disclosure, it's probably another psyop, if I had to guess. And I was just thinking, I was like, everything about this is probably all with the Department of Energy. I mean, I've already gone down this rabbit hole. If you want to find out anything that has to do with Roswell, that has to do with any of that stuff, the Department of Energy is going to have. Because where's the best place to hide something? In plain sight, in a place that you would never suspect. It'd be like me putting the burritos on the menu under dessert or something. You wouldn't expect to find it there. But if you look, you'll find it eventually. So that's kind of how that's going. I'm also, it's kind of interesting that that Bissell and who's the other CIA officer started Area 51 like 55 or something to do the
Yeah, I remember
Oxford.
you.
So, but yeah, it was some interesting rabbit holes. But I more listen to that podcast for entertainment, just because it's fun. But
Well, since you went down the alien route, and I think it's a fun one to go to, with the caveat that I've never seen an alien, and I'm not going to believe in them until I do.
sure.
Um, but you're one of the, there's a lot of fun mysteries among the different, and crop circles is one, but the one that always gets me is what's up with the cow mutilation. That one just makes no sense at all. I mean,
Well, I get what you're saying, but it all comes back to what I was saying. Like, I believe the government's behind it. Honestly, I mean, it's like I, obviously, I don't believe in aliens. I do believe that man could probably make something close. You know, and I'm sure that we've had technology. Interesting rabbit hole we go down some other time, but I kind of believe that we've had technology a lot longer than people realize, if that makes sense.
yeah,
And
that I'm familiar with that theory, and that ties into some of the alternative explanations of Nikola Tesla and that sort of thing, and you know, look, I think someone even mentioned even that on Tucker Carlson. So it's not that far out there that perhaps these unidentified flying objects was what they are. We've seen enough videotape. The military has. Military believes they're real.
yeah. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that like I believe that like the Egyptians were using. I don't believe that. I honestly, when it comes to that old, I believe whatever the Bible says as far as like time and what was being used. But I do think at some point after, maybe someone stumbled upon something and came up with something, and then
Well,
go.
okay. So let's go into that. Let's go into Egypt for a bit because I've got some fun questions on that.
Okay.
And this is it. So if you look at the Great Pyramids, first of all, it's absolutely amazing that these ancient civilizations were able to move objects as heavy as they did. I know they had slave labor, but that's some pretty
Yeah.
heavy stuff. It took some engineering that should have been outside their abilities. Uh,
Well, so hold on a bit. Hold on. I'm gonna interrupt you real quick. So someone was. I heard somewhere that this guy used ancient. Well, how about I just nix that and just say this? I believe that people from back in the day were not as dumb as people think, and they were actually probably pretty smart where they could figure out how to move something that big using engineering. Like people, like that's the thing that cracks me up is that people look at people from like let's say the time of Jesus that that they were dumb and because they had donkey and this that doesn't mean that that they were dumb.
no,
They
you're right. They were brilliant in many ways. They hadn't discovered electricity or the power that we have, which made a big difference. I mean, fossil fuels did more to they've raised more people out of poverty than any invention in history, and yet we're
right.
trying to end them. But
Yeah, but
so I'm going to touch on that. We're in agreement here, but
okay.
I'm going to give you a really good example of how smart they were. But you know, this is like when we talk about the founding fathers. Everyone wants to, how are these guys so brilliant? Well, we haven't evolved in 240 years. We're the same human beings we are today. We may be a little taller with a little bit better nutrition, but at the end of the day, our brains haven't gotten any better in 200 years. And at the same time, they didn't have a whole lot of distractions back there. They weren't watching MTV. They weren't playing video games. They weren't tweeting all the time.
Yeah,
They were either working or studying. I mean, that's how they entertained themselves.
yeah,
So they had the ability to focus on certain schools of study, and they would be very, very good at them. And there weren't as many fields of study then as there are now. So they could actually, in some areas, they were, and take that back to the Egyptians, same thing, but even fewer fields of study.
yeah. Well, I also think to go along with that, I also think that and one of the things that also really points to someone who doesn't believe in God that there is a God is by observing your surrounding. To point out the obvious, obviously, I don't believe that all this was an accident. obviously I'm a Christian, um, and I'm gonna have a viewpoint, and I know I'm right because there's no way that all this was by accident. But to get back to the point, because I know someone's gonna be like, well, but anyway, to get back into the point, um, which trying to explain my point, I done forgot what my point was. What we're talking. It's been a long week.
Well, jump back in when it hits you. Let me give you my pyramid mysteries because these are fun. So I want to hear your take on them because you've read enough about this stuff. You should have a good opinion. And I don't know the answer to any of this. I'm asking questions here. But
Sure.
First question is, the oldest pyramids are the biggest and most complex. As we went forward through the years, they got smaller and less well made. Now that's the sign of a civilization on the decline, not a one on the rise. And it makes no sense whatsoever. So I don't have an answer to that. But the other one that touches what you were saying about how smart these guys really were. If you look at how the Great Pyramid is aligned with the true north,
Yeah.
It is so precise that we did not have in modern times. We did not have the ability to get that precise until the last 50 years. Like that was 5,000-year-old technology, I guess something like that. That was better than modern man came up with until after World War II. That's how precisely it is aligned with true north. Now, how did those guys do that? I have no idea.
Observation.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to be able to measure it with that kind of precision. I mean, that takes quite.
Hey, here's the thing: that's the thing. So let's use this example. All right. My kind of thought is that I think we got lazy, and we found ways to make ourselves even more lazy. So we have all these things, but I think that people from years ago, obviously, things were probably harder, like you didn't have a calculator, but I'm fairly confident that things like for instance, using that device to uh, line yourself in the ocean. I forgot what it's called, but that if you really think about it, for as basic devices, that's pretty impressive on how to be able to navigate without a GPS.
You're talking about a sextant, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, they were able to measure latitude but not longitude, or it's they were able to do latitude. No, they were able to do longitude but not latitude. Latitude we weren't able to measure until, I think it's like last 200 years.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we don't know what capabilities they had, and to assume that they, like for instance, that people love talking about aliens with that, like that they had other help. I find that pretty insulting. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Egyptians because of, as far as like the culture that they've had for so long that was just so immoral and so tyrannical. But as far as, like Dave Ramsey always says, math works in Ethiopia just like it works in America. Math works in 1947 like it did in 2016. So I think that what they did was is that because they had so much time that they just mastered their crafts, and they probably had a type of compass. We don't know. They could have been able to make that and figure out how to perfectly align something, because it doesn't take a whole lot to be able to make a compass device and then also have a straight edge, or some way to what's the word, survey. I mean, like I
Well,
that
yes. So again, I'm gonna agree with you because there's historical evidence that some of those ancient civilizations were more advanced than we've been taught. And my favorite one of those is, and you can look this one up. It's called the Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings is the name of the video you look for. But there's a guy by the name of the Maps of Piri Reis, and I believe he was a Ottoman admiral, and he had these ancient maps that showed.
Did Doug ever respond to you?
No, he is not. So I think it's going to be a two-man show unless I don't know. I talked to him just yesterday, and I thought my impression was he was going to be here. So
So
who knows?
okay.
Maybe
Make sure he's okay. He's usually cool, but anyway.
Anyways, let me. So Piri Reis was an admiral in the Ottoman Empire. He had these maps that basically showed almost a perfect outline of the shape of what Antarctica was like without the sea ice. So not only did it implicate that Antarctica once upon a time was not completely frozen over, which that's what some people, that's speculation, but
Yeah.
we weren't supposed to have been able to get to Antarctica until the 19th century, or was it 18th? Anyways, long story short, they weren't supposed to have been able to do that, yet they had maps that bear out with the actual geothermic satellite pictures of what the actual coastline looked like, and they're almost identical. And this Piri Reis, Admiral Piri Reis, was 14th or 15th century Ottoman Turkish admiral, and he had these maps, and they're preserved. Anyways, it's a great video that asks some of these questions called "Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings." And again, I love these ancient mysteries because we don't necessarily have the answers, but they bring up questions.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, like I said, kind of speculate on things, and it's actually, kind of, I say not fair, just because, like I said, we don't know. But, um, yeah, as far as like Egypt and all that stuff, I'm sure that they had a way to do it. You know, it's, uh,
Well, obviously they did because it was done. Yeah, the question is how, and I don't think anybody's ever properly solved that. And we've had some pretty good, as you say, speculations. Did they? You know,
well, that's because man has a desire to know everything, and that's one of the beautiful things about. Uh, I
oops,
lost
your voice is.
what's
Yep, your
going.
voice is coming. Your voice keeps coming in and out. So is your mic tight?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's a lot better. Thank you.
Cool. I think it's because I was turning my head. I was going into thought, but I just realized what I was going to say might not have made sense. What was I saying?
No, we were talking about you were poo pooing the Egyptians or something. You were saying they had a way, but you're going in some direction with that.
Yeah. Oh well, maybe it'll come back to me. I'll tell
All
you
right,
what. I just turned 29, but my brain, I guess, is now like 76. I mean,
that's what happens when you listen to Joe Biden too much.
I hardly listen because I'm already dumb. I don't need to get dumber. Anyway, go ahead with what you're.
Here's another fun one. You look at the statues on Easter Island. Those things weigh a lot. They're heavy. I mean, they're several tons. And the people who lived in that part of the world had they had no technological sophistication, supposedly, but
Yeah,
they're able to carve these things and move them all over the island.
I don't know. I heard somewhere that those things were actually not that heavy.
We're gonna have to yeah. Let's get a fact check on that one.
All right. Well, let's do. I remember. Um, Speculation, I think, is a dangerous place to be because when people try to speculate, they try to manipulate it to make people believe it and not just be like, "This is like." Does that make sense? Like, for instance, how could they have done it? All right. Well, it had to have been aliens because there's no way that those, hillbillies could have figured it out. And it's like, but how do you know though? Like, you don't know, like you'd be surprised. So here's this interesting story that's local here to Florida. So there's a place called Coral Castle. It was built by I believe it was a Frenchman. No, it might have been a Croatian. I don't remember. Anyway, he was from Europe, and he had a 16-year-old girlfriend. Ugh. But not focusing in on that part. But anyway, she broke up with him, and um, so he came to America. I think he was in his 20s at this point. I think he was 26 whenever she was 16, because I think they're like 10 years apart. But anyway, he loved her so much and he was so torn that he built a castle out of coral. And he had a buddy this was in the 20s. And he had a buddy bring over, or 20 or 30s, either way. Technology is about
Talk,
that point.
you're talking about 1920s.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh, and he had his buddy had like a tractor trailer and they were able to get all the stuff moved, but he used ancient techniques to move the heavy coral, like logs, and he used them as like levers, and he was able to make a legit castle. And by using very sophisticated engineering, he had electrical system in it, and I believe it was not like a modern electrical system, and it was running off of I don't remember exactly what it is. If you could look it up right now, you could probably it'll probably say, but that's proof right there that older techniques, just because they're older, doesn't mean that they're not good.
No, they obviously. I mean, the evidence is right in front of our eyes that some of our ancient civilizations did amazing things, and some things they've done we can't recreate today. I was on a website a while back that actually had a list of those things.
Oh yeah, because
Which
we
is
built buildings that only last 10 years. I mean, obviously we don't. Obviously we gotten worse at it, but I think it kind of you kind of hit on the nose earlier in the show is that we're distracted. We're not. That's all those people had. Like there were people just dedicated to engineering. There's people just dedicated to this, just dedicated to that. Here's a fantastic example, and this is an automotive example, but it's a good one. So younger guys, straight out of tech school, all the fancy gizmos. It will take them probably 2 days to rebuild an engine. There's an older guy that I once knew, and he was like in his 60s, heavyweight, just had a heart attack, just before this story, and kind of just moved slow, but he precisely rebuilds that engine, I think, in 8 hours, just because he remembers things. He has a good sense of angles, and he had a good sense of tightness on things, and he was just able to boom, 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 do it, and those engines ran fantastic. So I think like if we looked at engineering schematics from the 50s, I guarantee you that they were probably made so well that today we probably couldn't do just as good. I mean, look at the
I think
materials we use. We use plastic. Toys used to be made of tin. Toys used to last so much longer. Now toys barely last very long at all. I don't think it's I don't think technology is the problem. I think what's the problem is that we don't have the effort or the love of what we're doing compared to people previous generation. You
well,
know,
we've got more. Yeah, well, again, it touches on we've got more distractions these days, and life has become too easy. You're not forced to become a master at your craft to live a very comfortable life. Um, I'm going to take a funny turn on you with this one because there's another theory that ties into this. The Supreme Court this week heard a couple of cases about North Carolina and Harvard regarding their affirmative action admissions policies. And I read an article or a blog from a guy who's basically saying, look, this explains a lot of why uh, our society is going downhill because we stopped being a meritocracy. And to use the analogy, do you want, when you're getting on an airplane, do you want a pilot who's an affirmative action hire, or do you want the one who got into pilot school because he was the most qualified? And you take that across any number of different professions, especially in engineering.
yeah,
And the whole idea of affirmative action instead of meritocracy, by definition, de facto, whether you're for it or not, de facto, it lowers the bar. You're not rewarding excellence. Therefore, there's less incentive to be excellent. That's how you're going to get that.
hmm.
Um, I mean, look, I'll listen to an argument of why affirmative action needed to be done, everything like that. I understand the argument. I personally don't agree with it.
Hold on.
I believe I
Make
believe in a
sure,
meritocracy.
just to make sure I'm on the same page as you. Affirmative action is like hiring someone who's black or like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So the Harvard case is really shows up. So you could be in the 40th percentile on your testing and everything like that, and get into Harvard if you're black or say Hispanic. Yet the
Hmm.
Asians, some of them are in the top decile,
Oh,
who worked hard and they don't get in.
okay.
You know,
I remember.
and yeah, and Asians get it worse than because Asians test better in academic endeavors than Caucasians do. So the Asians are the ones getting the real short end of the stick. And
Yeah. For whatever reason, the liberals just hate blacks and Mexicans and all of them. And here's why. Uh, Stephanie said that affirmative action is racist, 100%. So is abortion. If you think about it, where is most of the clinics in majority, black communities?
Well, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. I was studying the eugenicists, and the mother of Planned Parenthood was Margaret Sanger, and she's a sacred saint to the left. But people don't know about Margaret Sanger, or they should. First of all, she spent 4 or 5 years over in the Soviet Union, and they liked her ideas so much they adopted them there. And by the 1970s, the average Soviet woman under the age of 30 had five or more abortions. The Russians are dealing with a severe population problem, and it's all the results of what Margaret Sanger did to them. She was a eugenicist. She was a racist. Some of the people that she hung around with were open. I mean, you can read their own writings. They wanted the extermination of the black race, and these are the progressives. This is who they are. These are their thought leaders. And another fun figure that was over there at the same time was a guy by the name of John Dewey, who's basically considered the father of the American education system, or one of the two people given that title. He spent 5 years in the Soviet Union and loved how they indoctrinated kids. Well, you talk to anybody with a teaching degree, and they learn Dewey every year. They learn about his teachings and theories. These are progressive eugenicists. They are supremacists like you would not believe. They're the thought parents of the Nazis, and their ideas are still alive and well today.
Yeah. Hey, let's switch gears. Man, people are gonna think that we're just out of our minds tonight. That's because we don't have Doug. Doug just he hones us in. He hones us in. It's noticeable. But that's okay. Sometimes the inmates need to run the prison. Am I right?
Works for me.
So let's talk about the Nazis for a little bit. There's a lot we can learn from them. For one, they're snazzy dressers. I know a lot of people are like, "What? How could you say that?" They actually were. And there was a guy that had a YouTube channel, and it's about like dressing. So he knows all about. He was a tailor or something. I don't know. I didn't really look into him as really much, but he knew a lot about design, clothes, and all this stuff. He wasn't, a sissy or nothing. He just a regular guy, knew about this stuff, and he alluded to that the Nazis were really snazzy dressers, not just because they want to look nice, but also it's propaganda, and it's showing their supremacy. Now I don't remember if that was the exact words, but that's what I kind of take from it, is that how you dress does say a lot about you, and that's one of those things is, they're superior all the way down to their shoes, and there's there. It's like everything that they do has a reason. Here's another example. In World War One, and the trench warfare, the Germans had the best trenches.
Oops, your voice cut out again.
I said in World War One, the Germans had the best trenches. Do you know why?
No, I don't.
So whenever you dig a trench, you just put yourself back in 1914. You're digging a trench. Are you gonna try to dig that trench and are you gonna try and make it look nice and neat, or are you just gonna, all right, that angle's close enough, we'll figure it out? Would you say that that's probably how you dig a trench? Just let's get it dug.
Well, I used to work on underground construction, so I kind of have a different take. But I'll just say yes and play devil's advocate for you. I spent a lot of years on the wrong end of a shovel.
Well, the Germans, they actually made precise right angles in their trenches, and the reason for that is if an explosion went off on this side, it would be minimized to everybody around the corner.
Yeah, you know what? I've heard this before. Yeah, this is true. I don't know where I heard that, but that sounds a lot like you're bringing up a memory of something I read once upon a time.
So did I. I don't remember where it was from, but But anyway, the Germans are interesting people, and working on German vehicles, you get to see that a lot. And I know this is probably going to sound like I'm fanboying on the Nazis. No, I'm not. Let's get there. I like the Nazis as much as Rommel liked him right before his suicide. Suicide. Which a lot of people don't know that Rommel actually he was a fan of Hitler at the beginning of the war, and at the end of the war, he was forced suicide because he tried to have him killed. Rommel was a
What's
Operation Valkyrie.
That's what I was about to say. Operation Valkyrie, the Tom Cruise movie, which is actually pretty well. The movie's actually pretty well done.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know Rommel was part of that. Is that 100%? He.
Yeah, from the documentary I was listening to, I did not go really deep into it, but it made just because he was like there was a story that a lady, her grandfather was captured by Rommel, and Rommel was such a gentleman in war that he let them go after 2 weeks, and he said good luck, and I think he sent them on their way. So Rommel, I think, was a true gentleman and in general. That's very rare with the Nazis, but that was the case. But anyway, getting back to it, everything that the Nazis have done has a purpose, and not necessarily Hitler is behind that, but the scientists and the generals. It's really big in German culture to have precise, to be well thought out, maybe even a little over engineered. But yeah, that's something I've really been noticing about the Nazis, especially lately, is that everything has a reason. So going into the eugenics, I am during World War II. There was a lot of experiments done on twins and all that stuff by Joseph Mengele on on eugenics, and actually, I believe he was their lead guy on eugenics. Do you have any information on him?
Oh yeah, yeah. Mengel's. I say Mengele or Mengele. I don't know what the
I think
proper
it's
pronunciation is.
Mengele.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely part of what this entire history. Most of it, he wasn't original by any stretch, but I want to touch on your appreciation for the German precision and where it comes from. And I was trying to track down a video that I was sharing last week with a few people, but because I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name.
Say this real quick to the people listening. If I'm not making any sense, I'm so sorry. It's been a long week, and usually
No worries.
I'm talking, so my brain tends to wander off from time to time.
No worries. Everything. I think you're coming across just fine. I'm understanding everything, and
Cool.
I'm slower than usual. No, the other father of American education, whose name is escaping me. That's why I will find it before the show is over. He'd gone over to Prussia, which is basically Germany, in the 1800s, and was really he admired their system of education. And this is the German form of education, is very disciplined. It was about teaching obedience to the school, to authority. And this goes back in Germany, 200 years. And he brought that idea over to America. And it's about a 12-minute video clip. If I can find it, I will post it in the link here. But it's fascinating how we got those ideas from the Germans. I don't know. You have no reason to know this, but my grandfather left Germany in 1938. He was a doctor over there. He was a very, very stern man, not very warm. His children, including my father, were very well disciplined, all very successful educationally.
Makes
So
sense.
it's you're talking about this half of my heritage is from that. Anyways, that whole education system, and if you look at it, what's going on, God, talking about the elections coming up. Man, Andrew, if we've got to win these local races, these school boards, these planning commissions, I mean, that's how you take back the country from the bottom up instead of the top down. And we've got to get these schools back, and I think that's happening. I just saw some polls that shows the suburban white woman who's totally shifted, like 20 or 30% towards Republicans, and it's a lot of it's based on these CRT issues and the drag queen story time. So the culture war is starting to be won, and that's a big deal.
Yeah.
If we can stop the bleeding there, look, we've already lost an entire generation to this garbage in education, but maybe we can stop it here and see what happens. It's a tragedy, but And again, it comes back to the same Malthusian depopulation mindset. All these different eugenicists, and yeah, you've heard me talk often enough about who financed the Nazis. That was American bankers and industrialists,
Yeah,
and most Rockefeller's in on that. The Bush family, Ford Motor Company,
yeah,
heck, Ford. They had Ford Motor Company was doing business with the Soviets in the 60s and 70s to the extent that the trucks that were sending weapons down the Viet Cong Trail, whatever that was called, fighting against American soldiers of Vietnam, were using Ford engines. We
interesting.
were, yeah, they were making money killing Americans,
Yeah,
and yet these people have never gone. They've never, been accused of their crimes, yeah. And it's all true. It's all documented.
yeah. I'm sitting here pondering. I'm just taking everything in as far as which to your answer as far as the elections. Honestly, I've not paid attention much. I just know the big stuff right now, just because for one, my kids are not in a public school, so
Good for you.
they're homeschooled,
Yep.
so practical training. Um, but I think it's interesting that I guess here's a question. As far as the Nazis, what kind of, because I wonder if they're behind, like, uh, as far as their education, I guess tell me a little bit more about the Nazi education. Was
Oh,
it
just yeah, it was you were disciplined. You respected authority. You did not talk back to your teacher. You were regimented. You sat up straight. It was teaching you to be a good little statist. Respect authority. That was that's they were building, and it makes sense historically because Rothschilds made a lot of his money managing the estates for one of the archdukes. I'm supposed to remember this guy's name, who was basically had a bunch of Prussian mercenaries. That's for about 150, 200 years. That's with the Germans. It didn't become Germany until like the 1870s when Otto von Bismarck united all of Prussia.
uh,
At the same time, you had the Habsburg dynasty in Austria, which is that's a whole show unto itself. But that's really where Germany didn't become Germany. Before that, it was a bunch of small little fiefdoms that was known as Prussia. And they were very, very successful warriors, and they fought as mercenaries for the other nobility. There were Prussian mercenaries fighting against us in the Revolutionary War, for example.
interesting.
One of the, yeah, what yeah, here's a fun factoid. One of the and again, I should, if I was prepared for this, I would have remembered some of these names.
That's all right.
We sent an we
Perfect.
sent we sent we sent an ambassador over to Austria, basically to negotiate. And this guy was a complete buffoon, but he actually got one thing right. His whole job is to try to keep them from sending mercenaries over to America, and he partially succeeded. And the Russians actually helped us on that endeavor. But yeah, the Brits were using Prussian mercenaries. That's what they did.
Okay. Hey, I'm gonna ask you some random questions. I want to get your thoughts on it.
All right,
Uh,
sounds fun.
do you think the Nazis actually had a base in Antarctica?
No,
Why?
I don't see what the advantage would have been. It would not have seemed to me to be for there to be a strategic reason to have that.
Why? What was the point of Operation High Jump then?
Give me the details. I know I've heard the name, but I'm drawing a blank.
Supposed to be just an expedition led by Admiral Byrd, who I guess study Antarctica, and they lost a lot of men through that operation. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories behind it, as far as like the Nazis had a base, or there was aliens, and all that stuff. It's just an interesting topic because you have an admiral who's a 33rd degree Mason, who was given the Medal of Honor for traveling to the Arctic Circle, and he supposedly saw the Aryans and Hollow Earth and all that stuff. I mean, have you heard any of this? Does this make any sense to
Yeah,
you?
Yeah, I've heard the theories.
I think
I'm not going to say they're implausible because they are plausible. I just the one thing about Admiral Byrd that cracks me up, he's one of the most famous people who ever died of carbon monoxide poisoning. He had built a igloo type thing and didn't have ventilation, and actually that's how he died.
yeah.
That was that's an interesting one. No, when I say you asked me, do I think the Nazis had bases there?
Because they
Yeah,
were there.
it's possible, but why?
Well, they were there in the 30s. Now, I don't believe in the Hollow Earth and the Aryans, but here's something that's funny though, is that the Aryans described by Admiral Byrd all had German accents. And anytime anyone has ever mentioned Aryans or the certain types of aliens, they always had German accents or Swiss German, like Billy Myers. The Nazis spent time in Antarctica in the 30s, and then supposedly they were there after. And a 33rd degree Mason, supposedly, I don't know, something's just weird. I believe that there's something in the Arctic Circle in Antarctica. I don't believe it's aliens. I don't necessarily believe it's Nazis, but there's something that that all the big governments in the world doesn't want us to see, and that's curious.
Well, yeah, it's funny with with all the satellite technology we have today, you'd think there'd be very few secrets anywhere
Yeah,
on the planet.
but
But
that could be manipulated.
what's
I,
that?
I said those could be manipulated. They do it all the time.
Sure, sure. Yeah, you don't believe your lying eyes. All
Yeah.
right, more questions. Okay, chalk that down as one where I'm going to say probably not because it doesn't make military sense. But I'm also answering this from the standpoint of the technology at the time is what we were told it is. If they were more advanced than we actually know, which is possible, I grant that that is possible. I've heard those theories. I can't disprove them at all, and I understand where they come from. Um,
Stephanie says Garden of Eden. I'm gonna have to say no, just because the Bible is very clear that once once Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden, that an angel with a flaming sword was I don't remember if it was one angel or two, was standing at the gate guard, and no one is ever allowed in. So I don't believe that the Nazis or anyone else found the Garden of Eden because the Lord would not allow it. So that's my take on it. Um, I know not everyone's gonna agree with me on that one, but that's what the Bible says, and that's what I stick with. So
she says there was two cherubs or cherubim. Um,
uh,
cool.
angels,
Let's go. Yeah, yeah, I know the cherubs.
yeah.
I played Dungeons and Dragons. I know all of my mythology.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
uh, but um,
that's
but
funny. It's funny. It's funny you don't hear about more people seeking out the Garden of Eden as much as you hear people seeking out the legendary city of gold, etc. So you can tell
yeah.
where explorers'
Well,
priorities are.
yeah. Well, I believe that that the Lord doesn't want us to see it, and that's why we can't see it.
All right, so let's speaking of this one. Here's one of my favorite ones: the Ark of the Covenant. There's some amazing theories about what happened to the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah. Some people believe it's in Ethiopia. Some people believe that Indiana Jones saw the Nazis take it.
I think one of the more plausible scenarios is one that's become more popular based on some recent movies, but the Knights Templar may or may not have found some of King Solomon's treasure, etc., and would it have been there?
That's
And
speculation. I mean, here's something though. Here's what we know for sure. It was taken away at some point. I believe it was from Jerusalem at the time when
yeah,
it was taken away, and no one's ever seen it since. So that's something that you're going to learn about me, Warhamster. That a lot of people are going to learn about me is on a lot of things, especially whenever it's biblical. If the Bible doesn't talk about it, I'm fairly silent about it.
well, in this case, we're pretty sure the Ark of the Covenant once upon a time did exist. Does the Bible reference it? I don't
Yeah,
recall.
the Ark of the Covenant is 100% real.
Okay.
The
So,
Bible,
so yeah,
the
so what? So it is someplace. The question is, who took it away? Was it in Alexandria when uh,
who's to say it's here on Earth though?
well, that's a totally different conversation. I was going to stay a little bit more more on this planet tonight. But
So
I don't know. Once
that,
upon a time, it was here, and now nobody apparently knows where it is, or maybe some people do, and they're just not telling us. So,
yeah. Well, I believe that because God's in control. I believe that He doesn't want us to find it, and I don't know. Unfortunately, I guess I'm gonna be a party pooper on a lot of these answers because I'm not gonna. I honestly I don't know. Even if I want to speculate, I couldn't tell you. I could look into it. I'll probably do that. Look into it and see if I could find it. But as far as like where it possibly went, but I'm pretty sure that it's gone. Where I don't know, but I just know.
well, yeah, and of all the stories I've heard, I find the Knights Templar one to be the most plausible, and the reason is they definitely found what may have been a remnant of King Solomon's treasure because at one point in time, these were not wealthy people, and then 10 years later, they left Jerusalem with quite a bit of wealth to the extent that kings back in Europe feared their power. And this is a handful of people. And you mentioned Masonic, 33rd degree Mason. That all ties into the Templar, legends and everything like that. There is historical documentation, of the Templars and the Masons. So it's just a matter of which version of it we want to believe and what's happened since.
Well, like I said, as far as that, I'm gonna stick with I don't know.
You're no fun tonight, Andrew.
I know, but that's because I don't want. When it comes to that stuff, I don't like to speculate.
All right, we'll stay away. We'll stay away from the biblical stuff, and I won't even mention the Sphinx tonight.
All right, now I'm kind of curious. What are you talking about?
Well, this is one of my favorite arguments with the lady hamster. Not arguments, discussions. She's closer to you in terms of her interpretation of the Bible than I am. And she believes that the Bible is pretty close to verbatim. And I go, okay, well, let's talk about the age of the Earth. You and I had this conversation a month or so ago.
Yeah.
If the Earth is only about 6,000 years old, which some people interpret the Bible to say,
yeah,
I would say, okay, here's what we know about the Sphinx. It's supposed to be about 6,000 years old, but it turns out it's carved out of a nearby quarry. And what we think, and what science appears to tell us, is that the quarry next to the Sphinx is riddled with vertical pockmarks that can only be caused by torrential rains that hadn't happened in that region except for since 11,600 years ago, which would make the Sphinx twice as old as it's supposed to be, and would make human civilization twice as old.
What do you mean watermarks?
Oh, when rain keeps hitting granite like that, vertically, you get holes in the granite from torrential rain hitting it year after year after year.
Because of that, they've decided that it's 11,000 years old.
Well, those pockmarks could only be caused by torrential rain, and it has not rained to that degree in that area since 11,600 years ago, which happens to coincide with all of the Great Flood narratives of the timing, including Plato. But other ancient civilizations placed the Great Flood around the same time.
Yeah, but how do you know that?
Well, you got to believe in the science at some point.
But that'd be like me saying that there was a tribe of Wagga Waggas back 10 billion years ago because I said so. I mean, when it comes to carbon dating and it comes to all this, that all to me it is speculation. It's all speculation. It's people just trying to come up with an answer because man has the desire to know, and they can't just settle with faith. They can't just settle with, I just don't know. We have this desire that we have to know, and that gets people in a lot of trouble.
When it comes, So let me answer your question. The reason they know about the rainfall is they can do soil samples, and it's pretty scientifically proven that you go, you start digging down in the soil, how many years ago you're going. There's just simple laws of nature that are consistent enough that we can call that pretty hard science. So we know what the rainfall was in any given period of time from soil samples, and you can see what kind of vegetation grew in the area at the time. This is the fossil record, and I don't think it lies. But I also say two things can be true at the same time, because I'm also a man of faith, and I just don't believe that the strict literal version of some things in the Bible, they conflict with what I believe in science. So I've got to find a middle ground on it. I don't know the answers. This is just it's the explanation I've chosen to go with.
All right, I'll put you this. I'm gonna give you something to think about, and I want you to just let it stew in your head for however long it needs to. True science will align with the Bible, will align with God. True science will.
Yeah. Well, when you come out and visit, Andrew, San Diego, we're going to have you come to church with me and the lady hamster, and I want you to meet a pastor who's going to agree with you quite a bit. And he really does a good job of countering the arguments I'm making. And we've never sat down and had the full discussion, but he's on your team on this one. And he's a really bright guy. He's phenomenal.
Hey, question. Is California still communist?
Oh, goodness. What's that?
I said it won't be anytime soon then. Sorry.
You can still visit. You can still visit. They're not going to lock you up just for being from a free state.
I don't know. They might want to. Nobody likes DeSantis, so I feel like we all have a target on our heads.
Oh, we're not going to go into the DeSantis-Trump rivalry is being stirred up by the media.
Hold on. I'm going to go way off. And I saw someone. Now, I don't understand any of this. I think my wife tried to explain it at some point. But the term Zionist, because I know like Zion in the Bible, but I think someone said that there's a different type of something with Zionist that's not good, I guess. I don't know. I have to ask her again. But someone marked under one of the political signs of Ron DeSantis, which is illegal. It's actually illegal to do that. It's also illegal to remove them. But anyway, that they marked under their Zionists, and I was like, I don't understand what that means.
The textbook, it's a good question. The textbook definition of a Zionist is someone who believes in the nation, in a nation state of Israel. That's what a Zionist has been for quite some time. Now there's a Zionist political faction in the Jewish faith that's different than some other factions of Judaism, and it's that a lot of the worst parts of the last century's activities by organized Jewry, I think is the word they would have used back in the 30s, is attributed to Zionism. I'm not going to go there.
I wasn't really you too. I was just saying, like, because when it comes to God's people, because the Jews are God's chosen people. I mean, that's just a fact. That's a weird place to be, because could there be some bad people in Israel? Of course, we're all
bad people everywhere,
right? But I get confused sometimes. It sounds like people are saying the Jews are bad, and I'm like, well, hold on a minute. Like, I don't know. Maybe we should move on, because I don't understand.
No. Let me jump on this. It's a topic I got some pretty. I've done a lot of reading into. Let me address that. There are people out there saying they try to blame everything in the world. They say the Jews are running the world, et cetera, and that's nonsense. There are bad actors, fifth column, deep state types, people who have lust for power and coordinate behind the scenes. In every country in the world, in every religion in the world, in every race in the world, and the Jews are no different. And saying the Jews, it's even that alone is can get you kicked off YouTube. So we got to be careful here. But at the end of the day, my theory of who runs the world is this group of oligarchs behind the scenes. Every nation has them. These are the puppet masters. And of course, these are basically criminals that take power. They don't play by the rules, and they want the rest of us to have to. These are the same people that sponsor things like eugenicists. And of course, there's some of them that are Jewish. And guess what? Are Jews overrepresented proportionally in certain industries? Yeah. Guess what? Part of the Jewish heritage is they take their academics very seriously, and they also have a tendency, for many historical reasons, to like to work together. Just like if you go to Utah and you're not a Mormon, you're going to have a tougher time doing business than if you are. This happens. It's natural tribalism. We're not saying, sure, there have been some very bad historical Jewish people, and there are today currently, and some of them are Zionists. But I'm not going to say that the guys wearing the small hats are running the world, because there's other really bad actors that are also helping to ruin the world.
So I guess that kind of goes back to my question. So who are the Zionists? There's like is it like is it a small faction that's just called Zionists, or like are they because you got to remember Hitler called generalized the Jews as basically abomination. They need to be exterminated, and they blame the Jews for everything, all the problems in the world. And I'm like, you need to be careful, because those still, even though there's a new covenant, those are still God's chosen people. So when it comes to God's chosen people, that's the Israelites, the Jews, and I'm speaking as the nation of Israel. Um, you know, I, I'm not going to go against God's chosen people. Now, if there's like a faction that's Jew in name only, and they're not really Jews, but they go by this thing for whatever reason, I don't know. That's just a topic I don't.
Yeah. So the term Zionism is broader than it's used as something that it's not. Again, a Zionist just believes in the Jewish nation in Israel. That's what Zionism is, and it always has been. But there's going to be Jewish supremacists, just like there's white supremacists, just like there's black supremacists. We're here in California. God, we got to deal with activists from La Raza, which means the race. They wanted to reconquista, take over, reconquer the old Hispanic territories of California and New Mexico and Arizona. I mean, there's always going to be people that are going to have these tribalists, dreams of delusions of grandeur. Is there a secret society of Zionists hell bent on taking over the world? Probably, but you could probably say the same with every other race, religion, or creed on the planet. Delusions of grandeur are not unique to any race.
So basically, I don't know. This makes my brain hurt. I'm gonna have to talk to my wife about it, because she understands this stuff better than I do. As far as
it's tough, because you're trying to put you're trying to understand it from a biblical standpoint. At the same time, we're dealing with a secular discussion, so it's hard, because I get it.
Here's my opinion. I don't have one. I don't know. I'm just not gonna have an opinion on it. That's my opinion.
Well, at least I got mine out there today.
Well,
let's go. How long do you want to go? I can go another half an hour. I can go another hour. If you got more topics,
we go a little bit
to go.
I don't want to go too much longer, but we go a little bit longer. So let's move away from that a little bit. And I don't know, in the comments, what do y'all want to talk about?
What's Stephanie have to say
about flat Earth? We could talk about that a little bit.
That's a short conversation. We can talk about Kyrie Irving, though.
Who's that?
Kyrie Irving is a controversial basketball player. He's a phenomenally talented guy, and he's a few years ago he got criticized for being openly a flat earther on social media. Now, at the same time, he also got suspended, missed a lot of games the last couple of years. And this is one of the best players in the world, top 20 guy. He was LeBron. He's the one who hit the game-winning shot when LeBron won his first title. This was just, he was Robin to LeBron's Batman. Anyways, Kyrie also was anti-vax, and he would not get vaccinated. So the city of New York wouldn't let him play his home games for the New Jersey Nets. I'm sorry, the Brooklyn Nets, which they are now called, and cost him tens of millions of dollars, but he stuck by his word. Well, now he's in trouble for sharing an anti-Semitic video. Same time, Kanye West is doing all his anti-Semitic stuff and making all kinds of enemies. And so Kyrie is persona non grata in the woke world right now. But he was a flat earther, which he has renounced since. But that's the most famous flat earther lately.
Yeah. So here's my opinion on flat Earth. It's interesting. So the Bible describes the Earth in not a globe way. And yes, there's some things that are figurative in the Bible, but the Bible also will say, will make it clear of what's figurative and what's literal. And in Genesis, it's all literal. There's no there's no hyperbole, there's no nothing. God made the earth, right? So everything in Genesis we have to think of in a literal sense. And the Bible does mention that there is a firmament that is made of terrible crystal. It does not say that in Genesis, but it mentions it in other parts of the Bible. But there is a firmament and there's waters below, so our ocean, but there's also waters above. So from reading that literally, outer space is water.
And I would suggest that the definition of space is nothingness. But that being said, my opinion on flat Earth is that it's nonsense. I'm very, very confident that it's a spheroid, and I've
Well, if you talk to what's his face, I guess it's an oblate spheroid, so it looks like a pear. So I guess it's whatever people want it to be. I guess these days, because of globe because here's the thing, globe is actually fairly recent. Because there's people being taught flat Earth in the early 1900s.
Oh, it's people apparently still being taught it today, but it doesn't make it true. It's funny.
Well,
you talk.
Okay. Here's a question. Towards you. Like I said, am I 100% convinced that it's flat? No, because I can't see it. And I'm gonna make this statement right here. Even though from how I'm interpreting the Bible, there's only one interpretation of the Bible. So if I interpret it incorrectly, that's on me. That's not the Bible. Let's make that clear for one. The Bible's never wrong. So if I end up being wrong, well, then that was me misinterpreting that, and I'm okay with that. But at this point, I'm fairly convinced that the Earth is not a sphere. But do I think it's flat? Not necessarily. The Bible does describe the Earth as like a stamped seal. So, which means that it's got upturned edges, but it is flat as far as in the middle.
Well, I'm getting outvoted here in the chat. They're all on your side on this one. I'm going to stick to my guns, but I didn't come prepared to show you the science that I believe. I will say that as a scuba diver, we understand a lot of the physics, way pressure changes, and it scuba diving math or science really points strongly towards the current understanding of physics, with the Earth being a ball or a spheroid, so rotating around the sun, etc., being pretty darn accurate. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, I'm not budging on my round Earth theory. I've read enough of the flat Earth theories that none of them's convinced me at all. Your biblical one's interesting, because if you believe in the literal interpretation of the Bible, it does say what you say it says, and that's where we had this conversation offline.
Hey,
it's hard for me to stick to the literal definition of some parts of the Bible.
Well, how about this? For the time being, let's agree to disagree until you finally understand that I'm right. So
that sounds like something I would say.
Yeah, but I mean, seriously though, I mean, it's not a huge topic, and I'm not gonna because like I said, I could be completely wrong. Because I mean, like whenever I get to heaven and the Lord's gonna be like, it was actually a sphere, I'll be like, my bad.
Well, yeah, it's not gonna impact how I live my life.
No, I mean, here's the thing. At the end of the day, as far as for a Christian, the most important thing is to share the gospel, is to get people saved, and they continue that pattern. Other than that, technically nothing else really matters for a Christian. So as far as that, am I going to lose sleep over is the earth flat around? No. Do I think that there's some interesting things that, from things I visually see and things that the Bible say tend to match up more than what I'm told? I mean, I have an ocean out there, and I look, and it's pretty flat. I'm just saying.
Well, we talked earlier about how the ancient Egyptians were able to align the Great Pyramid to direct true north, and every bit of that math is based on the idea that the Earth is round. Every bit of that is. So that would be your ancient proof on that one. I do know that one.
Well, hold on a minute. Hold on.
The fact that we measure longitude and latitude has to do with the fact that
hold on.
so those calculations assume a round planet.
Hold on. Grids do not indicate that of round. All grids do is just give you a pinpoint location on a certain spot. Because according to the calculations for curve, which I know this is a topic that's probably been beat to death like nobody's business, but it does make sense. If you look at those equations at a certain distance, it should be a whole lot different than what you're seeing. So, like for instance, from someone used an example of, well, here's something. When a ship goes over horizon on a flat Earth, it's dropping out of view. There was someone that did a video, it was a raw video, and they had a really nice camera, and the ship went out of view, and they zoomed in, and they still saw the ship in whole.
All right, so let me throw this one at you with a topic we talked about earlier. If we go back to the sextant. Every degree of latitude is wider at the equator than it is at the 45th parallel. That is only possible mathematically if the Earth is a spheroid.
Wait a minute. So to make sure I understand what you're saying, so it gets wider as you go south.
If you're at the equator,
okay,
the difference between the 158th parallel and the 159th is longer than if you're at the 45th. I'm sorry, the difference between 1 degree of latitude is longer at the equator than anywhere else on the planet. And as you get closer to the poles, it gets smaller and smaller. That's the mathematical proof of a round planet.
Well, how about this?
That's the math. That's the math that the ancient mariners relied upon for the sextant to even work.
Anything work on a flat circle?
It would not.
How so? Because I could draw a pinpoint in the center and draw lines out and have it be wider at the equator and more narrow at north.
Well, you can draw it, but to have it work in the real world, it has to be. There's 360 degrees for a reason on the longitude and latitude. Yeah. That represents a circle circumference.
Hey, on a flat Earth, you could have 360 degrees too.
We're gonna definitely have to jump off this topic. I wish you could see. Yeah, I am smiling right now. By the way, sorry about the video, guys. It's I have to. I'm getting a new Windows laptop this weekend. Apparently, my parallel machine camera keeps disappearing, so you don't get to see my smiling face. Hopefully, you like the hamster avatar this week.
Is that a hamster?
No, it's a hamster. It's a war hamster. See the little guy peeking out underneath the visor?
Oh, it looks like a small person in a big helmet.
That is a hamster. It's the picture isn't set up right. The writing is supposed to say, "I have questions."
Oh, I can't see that. But that's all right, though.
Well, that's a StreamYard imaging issue. They need to work on that.
Fair enough. All right, so let's move on. Because obviously you and I are not going to agree. And you know what? Hey, that's okay.
But reasonable people can disagree.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. So... hold on. Let me read the comments real quick. How about you talk about something interesting about the CIA or something about Area 51 or something while I'm reading?
Well, okay, you keep reading, and I'll finish what I was talking about at the very beginning about the eugenicists and the what was called the original technocrats. the Rockefellers were sponsoring these people back in the 20s. They had this big organization. They were going to create this technocratic society where these smart people, I used to call them RSGs, really smart guys, that's very sarcastic, were going to order the world in a scientific-based thing. And the guy who was heading it, last name was Scott, he got ingratiated himself in with Columbia University. He was eventually exposed as a fraud because he was telling everybody he had all these advanced degrees, and some journalist did some research and found out he'd never graduated from any college anywhere. The dean of
Well,
Columbia tossed
Bob
the dean.
Lazard.
What's that?
How do you know he wasn't Bob Lazard?
Bob wasn't born then, so that's probably a good indication.
Well, no. Like, what I mean is, how do you know they didn't just get rid of his records?
Oh, I don't think they probably had that. Well, because the guy basically didn't fight back against it. He ended up getting tossed to Columbia. He actually was a grifter in this case. This guy was a legitimate grifter. He was completely discredited.
Well,
but what's interesting? Let me finish the point. It's interesting. You can look it up today, and there is something called Technocrats Incorporated. It is still in existence to this day. It still has chapters in New York City and other places in the Northeast. Do a search of Technocrats Incorporated. These are the same people, but their ideas didn't ever quite go away. And you look at this New World Order, this Great Reset crowd, the World Economic Forum. They're following a lot of the playbook of what the technocrats talked about, and that is really, people want to understand. Why is who's making the decisions across the world with these globalists and in Washington D.C. We are run by a technocratic elite that's produced by our colleges, who are sponsored by the same oligarchical families that made all the money in the 19th and early 20th century, and decided money doesn't matter because we have so much of it. We're going to basically rely on power, and their entire ideology is based on this eugenics depopulation program, and that's what we're living through. That's what we're fighting against, is a bunch of technocrat minions of the global oligarchs. These are the people that run in the think tanks all across DC, the Hoover Institute type places. These are the ones that run the National Security Council. These are the Victoria Nulands of the world. This is the Pete Buttigieg. Buttigieg is a product of the technocratic thought process. This is basically the DC bureaucracy defined, and it comes from an ideology that's over 100 years old, and it's rather disgusting and disturbing, and we ought to be worried about it, and it needs to be broken up. DC's got to become a lot smaller for our civilization to survive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, until we get people. Now, here's where Doug would be proud. Man, he's going to come back next week and be like, what in the world? But anyway, and I could just hear him saying that too. What have you all been doing? But anyway, until we could get people to understand that we don't have a national government, I don't see things changing anytime soon. Just because you'd be surprised at how many people think, hey, big government, come rescue us, when it's like you're the only one that could actually change things. How long has Nancy Pelosi been in power and nothing's happened? People in San Francisco hate her. Someone recently was polling people like, hey, what do you think about Nancy Pelosi? And they were not saying nice things. So they must be rigging things over there or something for her to keep getting elected, because those people did not. I don't think there was a single person that said one nice thing about her.
Well, she'll never be primaried. The Democratic Party will never allow that. So she's always going to be on the ticket every 2 years. And there's not enough Republican resistance in her district. It's something like a 90-10 district. So they're going to vote blue no matter who. It's almost like a shoo-in.
Well, then here's what they need to do. Someone came up with a theory about sending California off into the ocean. How about we just, now, if there's anyone in here that's from San Francisco, get out before this happens. But maybe just take San Francisco and push it out.
Then we're stuck with dealing with LA.
They could go too. They could.
I got
time together.
You got all that wonderful coastal land up by Santa Barbara and Big Sur.
It's amazing how such horrible people can make such a beautiful state.
They didn't make the state. God did.
Say what?
Say they didn't make the state. God did.
Well, You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing how okay, let me rephrase that. It's amazing how they took such a beautiful state and turned it into a poop hole.
Yeah, well, that's and I got a thought on that. It's really funny. Over the last few years, you've seen a lot of people leaving California and New York, and then moving into quote unquote red states. And anybody spends any time on the internet has heard people say, you can leave California, but don't bring your politics with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm here to tell you that California used to be one of the most conservative states in the country. Most of the West was. And what happened was a great influx of what I call Yankees. Basically, people from Boston, New York came out here and brought their ideas with them. And that's when California went to hell. But the truth of the matter is, California was lost by Reagan because he signed the amnesty bill.
Did you realize?
And what's that?
I said I don't think Reagan helped, and you said Reagan, so we're on the same page.
I actually missed it. Yeah, so yeah, Reagan's amnesty bill is what put it over the top, but it was the ideas that came from the Yankees.
He's the reason why. He's one of the reasons why gun laws are so bad there, because he didn't want black people to have guns.
Oh, who, Reagan did?
Yeah, in the '60s.
I hadn't heard that one. That's entirely possible. Ronald Reagan was one of the best cheerleaders for America at a time when America needed a cheerleader.
Do you know what he did during World War II?
Go for it.
In World War II, because he was an actor, that was his background. He made very entertaining videos as far as for like demonstrations and stuff like that. Like, man, you're gonna have to look him up. Like, he did a lot of videos during World War II that really helped in a lot of ways. I forgot exactly what they were. I don't remember if it was instructional videos for the soldiers or if it was videos for people at home. But he did a lot of stuff like that during World War II, and that was how he contributed to the war effort. Was making essentially movies about World War II.
Propaganda. By definition, it's government propaganda if you're making pro-war videos.
I don't necessarily think it was pro-war, because I haven't seen it in a while. I couldn't tell you. So what you should do is look up Reagan World War II videos or movies or something, and it'll pop up. I know what it was. He was making videos on to help pilots identify Japanese Zero planes and stuff like that. That's what it was.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it wasn't propaganda. Well, I guess it still could have been, but yeah, that's what he did.
My favorite World War II. Remember we talked a few weeks ago about McCarthy, Joseph McCarthy, and McCarthyism. The guy who went and volunteered and became a hero even though he didn't have to. I thought that was pretty impressive.
How about
Senator McCarthy is very misunderstood by history, and that'll never change because he was anti-communist. What's going on in chat here? Stephanie was asking about Prop 1 in California. Well, it's Prop 1 because it was our number one legislative agenda, but that's basically the biggest pro-abortion bill. It allows abortion up to birth in California. That's on the ballot on Tuesday. So here's me saying, everybody, if you're in California and can vote legally, vote no on Prop 1, please. In fact, every single one of our propositions is a no vote. And Gavin Newsom even agrees with me on Prop 19.
If the state government came up with it, it's probably not good.
Generally speaking. Did you know California's constitution is the second longest in the country?
Yes, because I looked it up the other day and I was like, I'm not reading all this.
That's 100 pages.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Well, I have to. And it's not much fun. And it keeps changing.
Florida is I don't remember how long it was, but it wasn't too bad. But also I could like skip around. Like they had links and stuff. I think the California one, you had to read through it.
Yeah, it's a homework assignment in and of itself. In fact, it should be, it could be a whole class in a college for a semester. The best constitution I've read, and I've read a lot of state constitutions, is New Hampshire's. And it's either Article 6 or 8 there that's got the best Second Amendment type language I've ever read. But some other stuff there is just brilliant. The New Hampshire Constitution is written in a way that everybody should just smile.
How is it written?
She says, "Oh, I'll just pull it up here real quick." And because it's simple, but
Yeah. Well, Florida's is the language in it is essentially the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed except by regulation of law, which technically is in the state's purview. They can regulate the law as far as guns.
of course they can. Every state can.
Right. So technically, that one's actually not bad because it recognized it, but also it's like, hey, this isn't our authority. We can't regulate the law. Fair enough. Just
No, it was
don't.
actually so it was actually argued in Philadelphia in 1787 at the convention. There were a few people like George Mason who didn't want a Bill of Rights, period. And the argument was, we don't need one. All the states already have a Bill of Rights, which is really interesting.
Yeah, but the Bill of Rights for the states is for the states. The Bill of Rights for the federal government is for the federal government. That's like what me and Doug and you were talking about not too long ago about incorporation.
Exactly.
With he believes that the Bill of Rights is incorporated for all governments, local, state, and federal, which actually would not make sense and would actually not reduce the checks and balances that we would have. Because, for instance, Doug made a very good point. I don't want a 5-year-old being able to buy a gun. I don't want someone to be able to falsely shout bomb just to cause chaos. So there is some necessary, very minuscule, but there is some necessary laws that do make sense in regards to those things. But also, we need to tell them what's too far.
Well, the question is, who's we?
People. We go to the governor and the state legislatures and we say, okay, well, this is what we're okay with, this is what we're not, and we'll vote you out if you do that.
So let me, I'm going to pull up the New Hampshire Constitution. It's got some really cool stuff in here. Give me a second to share the link.
I think Stephanie might have put it up. Is it section 6?
Why did she?
It
I
says
I have it here.
every person has a right to keep and bear arms for the defense of himself or the state.
Well, she might have put up Michigan's. She said she liked that a lot. But in New Hampshire, it's all persons have the right. Can you see the screen right now?
No.
You should be able to see my screen.
Well, let's see if you. Oh, hold on. I got to add it to the stream. Go ahead. Okay.
Let me know when.
Yep.
So we're right here. All persons have the right to keep and bear arms in defense of themselves, their families, their property, and the state. And that was updated in 1982.
Interesting.
There's another really fun one in here. I think it's 7 I was looking at. The people of the state have the sole power and exclusive right of governing themselves as a free, sovereign, and independent state, and do and forever hereafter shall exercise and enjoy every power, jurisdiction, and right pertaining thereto, which is not or may not hereafter be by them expressly delegated to the United States of America in Congress assembled. What they're basically saying is incorporation doesn't exist. Right there in writing, June 2nd, 1784.
Can you text me that after this?
I'll send the whole link. I'll put the link in the chat right now.
And talking about rights and regulation towards rights, one of the things that one of the reasons why I say it is fair to have something is because, and Doug has said this too, is the people need a check and balance too. Yes, the state needs to have something holding accountable. Yes, the federal government does, but so do we. We can screw things up just as quickly if we're out of control.
Yep. Okay. So let me answer that. Let me phrase it a little differently, because we're in agreement. If you look at the entirety of government and its powers, whether it be federal, state, or local, there's a finite number of powers. Let's say there's 20 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the way the Constitution is set up is there are a few very limited and enumerated powers given to the federal government. And according to the 10th Amendment, all the rest go to the states.
Mm-hmm.
Now, over the last 240 years, the federal government, or what they would have called the general government, has taken more and more of those powers away from the state. Now, there's a process to do that. It's called the amendment process, but this didn't happen. Therefore, they're illegitimate and unconstitutional. So the solution to getting our freedom back as a people is for the states who created the government in the first place to start reasserting their sovereign rights and taking back the powers that are delegated to themselves. They have every right to do it, and there's nothing the federal government can do to stop it.
Yeah.
That is the peaceful path to restoring the Constitution, and that's in a 1 minute 1 minute little short clip. Is exactly what Doug and I are working to do. He's looking at it. We talked about it yesterday. He works at the Constitution from the top down, and I work at the Constitution from the bottom up, and we're trying to meet in the middle, and that's kind of where we're at. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
We talked about that last night. It's an interesting analogy.
Well, if y'all make, because here's something interesting is, so my representative is Brian Mast, and I actually have contact with him, but I'm probably going to go through the more official channel because I don't think it'd be very professional to go the other way. But I think what would be a good idea is for y'all to make a video, kind of bringing this up, and then what we need to do, and I'm sure y'all are going to maybe put on your website or whatever, is we need to start sharing this with people as much as possible, and then have them share it with their representative and be like, hey, this is what we need to do. Share it with the governor, share it with whoever. Get in front of who you have to in order to get this ball rolling, and don't take no for an answer. So
yeah, we're gonna work on outreach after the election. There's a lot of ways to outreach directly to politicians ourselves. So we are definitely working on that. There's got to the bottom line is between the education system, the media, what our politicians do, we have a population that doesn't understand government. They for the love of God, you have Tucker Carlson, one of the most important voices in the country, still spouting off about democracy. And by the way, he did an interview with Will Cain this week that I watched last night, where Tucker really talks about where he comes from and everything like that. It's phenomenal. It's one of the best things I've watched in ages. And it explains that Tucker actually realized that he's a rich elitist and why he does what he does. He's all about his family. But it's incredibly honest, and Will Cain did a great job of interviewing him. And Will Cain's more like, middle class guy, worked his way up. And Tucker grew up less than 10 minutes from where I'm sitting right here. He's within a year or so of my age. He went to a private school, La Jolla Country Day. I did not. His social circles and mine have never crossed. But I know exactly the group of people he ran with and where he comes from. He's an elite California, pampered kid who just happens to be intellectually honest. But he keeps spouting off that, our democracy, and the last thing we are is democracy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So there's people that think that we have a national government, and then there's people that think that the Constitution means that we could do whatever we want and no one could do anything about it. So you have one extreme, and then you have the other. We need people to meet in the middle. That's the big problem. We're polarized. The nation is polarized. You have some that's, hey, my rights belong to me, but you don't get to have them because of who you are. And then we have the others that are like the same, but on the reverse opposite. And it's we need to get on the same page. What people don't realize is that the federal government doesn't give a crap about them.
Well, you talk about the polarization. That's intentional. And again, I say this umpteen times, but this is ought to be the my closing statement. How Doug has his sign off. Something I've been trying to hammer in everyone's head for years. Right versus left, red versus blue is just a distraction. They're trying to distract us, keep us at each other's throats and oppose, to keep us from looking up and noticing who's really pulling the puppet strings, who really controls it. And it's these oligarchs that they basically own these two, quote unquote, opposing political parties, but they're not opposed. They're a uniparty. It is a cartel system. We are run by the people who control the cartels. We do not have representative government. we basically are given a false choice between red or blue. That's a load of garbage. We need to get back to local representation. That's why we talk about the 17th Amendment,
Wait a minute.
Reynolds v. Sims.
Are you saying, so we need to wrap this up here shortly, but are you basically saying that we actually don't, that we have a false sense of voting, if that makes sense?
100%. Best example I can give you is Ron Paul was not part of the system. He's uncontrollable, so they ignored him. And the guy was leading. The guy was twice he ran for president. He was leading in the primaries, and the news just ignored him, pretended he didn't exist. The party was never going to sanction him. Same thing the Democrats did to Bernie Sanders. There's no way they were ever going to let him run.
Yeah.
Trump came in out of nowhere. Hey, Chris, I didn't know you were here. Yeah, so basically what I'm saying is it's a false choice. Now, on Tuesday, you're going to vote Republican as hard as you can, simply because this current iteration of the Democratic Party and their agenda has to be stopped in its tracks.
Well, you know what? I wanted to see what communism felt like, so I figure I'll go the other way.
That's a brilliant idea. You did say you had kids?
Yep.
Yeah, I know you better than that. No, Tuesdays are really important that the Democrats lose it. The radical left has jumped their agenda, and they're too extreme to be allowed. What I say, the most important thing you do, in November is not what you do on November 8th. It's what you do on November 9th. And that's when the Republicans do take the House and the Senate. That's when you hold these politicians' feet to the fire. Say there's some stuff that's been going on that needs to be stopped.
Yeah.
And they better do it. That's it's an important election, but right now it's about survival. Thankfully, the tea leaves look really good in terms of Republican momentum. And a lot of the Republicans that are going to win, especially in the down ballot races, are a lot of people that are not, what we call rhinos or establishment Republicans. But it takes several cycles to get the kind of people that have just woken up in the last few years into office. We can't do it overnight. So we still have a major rhino problem, and the rhinos are barely better than the Democrats at this point.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to see how it goes. I need to dedicate some time to go out and vote, just because I haven't had a chance to do it. Some people have already voted because Rob DeSantis allowed for people to vote early, which I don't know if that's constitutional or not. But then again, it's also, I haven't fully read through the state constitution, so I'm not sure.
Well, the U.S. Constitution specifically says that Congress has the ability to determine the election day, not plural, not days. There's not an election month. There is an election day. The fact that we have no, it's not constitutional.
Yeah, but but I'm more talking about. Well, see, that's the thing is that they kind of mixed it because, like, as far as like state things, I don't. If the state constitution doesn't conflict with it, then I don't think that there's necessarily an issue. Federally, I agree. I didn't even think about that because I forgot it's like who is it, Senate, and who gets voted on this time?
Well, on November 8th, everything: Senate, Congress, local races, school board, dog catcher, all these things are on the.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
no, it should be an election day, and it's amazing that places like France and Brazil recently are able to tabulate all of their votes in one day, and it takes us weeks. That's the opportunity. The opportunity for fraud is opened up the looser you make the rules. People who want to, if you're going to increase mail-in balloting, which is admitted over decades that increases the opportunity for fraud, which is evidenced by more rejected ballots through mail than in person. There's not even an argument that mail-in ballots is more subject to fraud. What you would do is say, okay, if we're going to do mail-in balloting because of the quote-unquote pandemic, at the same time, to preserve the integrity of elections, you will also ensure that our signature matching measures are stricter. And they did the opposite. They increased mail-in balloting and said, no, you can't do signature matching. That, by definition, is a logical fallacy. If you want election integrity, you don't do that. Therefore, you must not want election integrity. I mean, it's self-evident what they're doing. I don't even think I can't even believe that this is even a discussion nationally.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting time that we're in, isn't it?
Yeah, Chinese blessing, Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times.
But then again, 100 years ago, they're probably saying the same thing. Interesting times we're in, huh? Because I believe well, I guess in America things weren't too bad. It's in a few years. So, in the anniversary of the Depression would be 2029, wouldn't it?
So ask the question again.
The anniversary, the 100-year, the
Oh, yeah.
centennial of the Great Depression would be 2029, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you know what? We had to do it on your show one of these days. We had to go look into the real causes of the Great Depression. Doug would get a kick out of doing that.
Well, in that case, shouldn't we have Alan on?
Yeah, he'd be good at that too.
Because isn't he the guy that's all about the financial stuff like that?
Well, he does. He does. Yeah. Well, I would say both of us are. He does it from. He comes from the perspective of a forensic accountant, and I come from that of a recovered Wall Street guy. So we have two different versions of the history. We always meet in the middle and come to the same agreements. But I really enjoy having these conversations with Alan. I think Alan's fantastic.
Well, then how about this? How about y'all see if we could get Alan on? Then it'll be the four of us, and y'all could duke it out, and I'll just sit here and ask some questions, and we'll make a day of it.
I don't know. Let's find out if Doug's still alive, and we'll see if we can set that up.
You know, I'm not gonna lie. When it was like 10 minutes in, I'm like, "Can someone please go to his house, make sure he's okay?" Oh man.
Hey, wellness checks in California are popular these days. That's a Paul Pelosi reference. That was a wellness check. No, I'm
Oh,
sure Doug's fine. In fact, he probably told me he wasn't going to be on when I talked to him last night. But I've got so much on my mind, I probably forgot. But I'll call.
you know what someone told me that I did not know? Is that because I heard somewhere that like he was in a fight with a male prostitute or something? I don't know, but someone said that that the guy admitted in his I guess his confession that he was going there to kill Pelosi, and whenever he found out she wasn't there, he just hit her husband on the head with a hammer. Is that right?
No, there's a lot of different versions. Hang on, I'm calling Doug right now.
Okay.
Can't see. We're going to do the wellness check here online.
Yes.
Hey, we just wanted to make sure you were alive. I'm finishing up the show with Andrew, and we're doing a wellness check.
Oh shit! I forgot
about it. They can hear you. They can hear you right now, Doug. I've got you live on the air.
Oh, jeez, I'm actually because my grandson's dealing with that.
No worries. We just Andrew's all worried. He goes, Doug never misses. You know, he's usually really communicative. I go, well, let's do a wellness check. So it's good to know you're alive. Your audience is happy.
Okay, I'm actually took my grandson out to lunch today, and now I'm heading to the store to pick up some stuff. Oh man, I just forgot about it. What's your name? Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, Virginia.
Of course, my backseat driver sitting next to me.
Hi, Virginia.
No. Okay, so we're on the air right now?
Oh, you're on the air right now.
Okay, well. Oh, joy. I've just been so busy. I also had another meeting that I forgot today at 12:30, and so just because I got busy. How are you gonna go, Jay? Well, wellness check. I am fine. I am alive. I am kicking, and I am perfect time. So busy that I forgot about my responsibility tonight.
It's all right. Andrew and I had a fun conversation. We went off some strange topics that you would have steered us away from. So we got to have more fun without you. That when the teacher's away, the mice will play.
Oh well, there is that. Yeah, of course. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys doing wellness check. Yeah, just sometimes what happens, I get so overwhelmed that things start falling out of my ears and get forgotten. And that just so happened to be tonight's show.
No worries. We had a great time even without you. You guys have a good night.
Right. Well, thank you for the call.
Talk to you soon. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you Sunday.
Bye.
All right. There's your wellness check, Andrew.
I actually feel better now.
I figured you would. You're a good man.
I was like, somebody call him. Oh man, no, I was genuinely worried. Like 5 minutes in, I was like, I kept checking to see if he was like popping up, and I just missed it. Like I was just like,
Well, it's partly my fault because usually he and I talk just about every day, especially on Fridays, because that's the one day he doesn't do classes, and that gives us our chance to get into some of our deep topics. But I've been so buried with my own stuff the last few weeks, especially this week, that he and I have not chatted very much. So it's partly on me. I would have normally reminded him.
Yeah. Well, it's all right. I mean, I texted him earlier today, and asked if he could go ahead and email everybody just so we could have a full house, and obviously he missed it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry, I mean, I think we had a pretty entertaining show tonight.
I have no issue with the show that we had tonight at all. So
yeah, well, besides the fact that my video is not working, which will be rectified very soon.
How soon? Before next Friday?
Yeah, I believe so.
Hey, do you think you could get before I sign us off? Do you think you could get Alan on the show next week?
I don't know about next week, but I'll reach out to him and find out when he can. We can do that. We can do that sometime soon. The holidays is coming soon, so I think it's fair to tell your audience this is probably we may miss some Fridays over the next couple months because people get crazy with their holiday schedules and everything like that. But we'll do our best.
Yeah. Well, that is if everybody is listening later, and with the people listening now, you've heard it. So if we don't have a show, we just won't have one, unfortunately. But I'm sure we'll do.
Yeah, as of right now, I'm looking good for next Friday, but that's always subject to change. And I told you that on day one. I go, my schedule is not entirely. I'm not entirely in control of my own social calendar, so things can change quickly.
Yeah.
But I'll try to make it here as often as I can. I enjoy doing the show with you. And we had a fun audience that hopefully starts to grow.
Yeah, well, we have 5 in there, so.
Yeah, I thought 6 at one point, but these are we call the OG. What do they call it? OGs, original gangsters of your show. A lot of these people are on our Tuesday class and other stuff that I've done. So these are all good people. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Stephanie, and whoever else is here. We really are flattered to have you guys on here.
Yeah. All right. Well, how about we go ahead and call it? This was a lot longer than I was expecting, but that's okay because it was good stuff, and I feel better that Doug's alive. So, all right. Well, normally we'd have Doug sign us off, so I'm gonna give the honor to Warhamster, and you can say what you want to sign us off.
Very good. All wars are banker wars. Right versus left is just distraction to keep us looking up from who really rules us. And in honor of Douglas V. Gibbs, divided we fall, united we kick butt. God bless. Vote on Tuesday. See y'all next week.
All right, you heard it. See you next week, y'all.
Good night, guys.